A federal judge called it Orwellian. The US government designated an AI company a national security risk for refusing to remove safety rules embedded in its model. Here is the part most enterprise leaders have missed. Company was Anthropic. Customer was the Pentagon. Pentagon demanded the safety constraints be removed from Claude. Anthropic refused. Government used a statute designed for Huawei and ZTE, never before applied to a US company, to cut Anthropic from federal contracts. Judge Lin found that pretextual. The Trump administration has already appealed. This is not settled law. It has opened a question your governance team has not prepared for. Do you understand the values your AI vendor has embedded in the model you have deployed? Because if your operational requirements ever crossed your vendor's red lines,
let's get into it.
On 26 March 2026, a US federal judge issued a 43-page preliminary injunction. The subject was an AI company that had published 2 safety constraints on its model. When a government customer demanded those constraints be removed, the company refused. It was designated a national security risk. The judge found that designation was likely pretextual. The real motive, she found, was unlawful retaliation for the company's public criticism of the government's contracting position. That AI company was Anthropic. The government was the Pentagon. Judge Rita Lin of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California found that the Pentagon's supply chain risk designation was unconstitutional. The mechanism used 10 U.S.C. Section 3252 had never been applied to a U.S.-based company. It was designed for foreign adversaries, Huawei, ZTE. Lin's preliminary injunction barred all 17 named federal agency defendants from implementing the designation. The GSA restored Anthropic to federal procurement schedules on 3 April 2026. On 2 April, a parallel designation under a separate statute continues in the D.C. Circuit. Full resolution is estimated at 1 to 2 years. Lin drew on the 303 creative Supreme Court precedent from 2023. The government cannot compel a creative entity to produce expressive content that contradicts its values. Her preliminary finding is that Anthropic's published safety positions may constitute protected expression. This is not settled law, but it is the first time a court has mapped this territory. The series has tracked the governance gap since Part 5, the distance between organizations scaling AI adoption and those with the maturity to govern what they are deploying. Part 12 extended that gap to the cognitive dimension. Human capacity to oversee AI has a ceiling, and most enterprise architectures are designed as if that ceiling does not exist. This article introduces a third dimension, the contractual governance gap. Every enterprise that has deployed a foundation model with published constraints, which now describes most enterprises using frontier AI, is party to an implicit governance framework they may never have examined. Long's constraints govern what the model will and will not do. Most organizations have never considered what happens when their operational requirements evolve to require something the model refuses. The Pentagon is the most powerful procurement customer on Earth, negotiating an approximately $200 million contract with a vendor already on its classified networks. If resolving that tension required federal court intervention, enterprise leaders should ask a direct question: what is our process for managing this conflict if it happens to us? The breadth of support for Anthropic's position is a signal in itself. Amicus briefs were filed by Microsoft, the Cato Institute, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, the First Amendment Lawyers Association, retired U.S. military leaders, industry trade associations, the American Federation of Government Employees, and Catholic theologians. Google and OpenAI employees filed supporting briefs individually. Neither company filed as an institution. The Cato Institute and the American Federation of Government Employees do not typically file on the same side of anything. The Catholic theological argument drew on just war doctrine. Any weapon capable of making targeting decisions without human input violates proportionality, and surveillance at scale undermines the dignity of the surveilled. These are heaven vector arguments in theological language. The principle that humans must remain in the accountability loop cuts across political, institutional, and religious traditions. This has become a constitutional principle question, not an AI industry solidarity question. Lin's ruling creates the conditions for a new analytical concept. We might call it AI safety as protected expression, the proposition that embedding ethical constraints into AI model training constitutes expressive content that a state actor cannot compel the removal of. To be precise, this is analytical synthesis, not settled law. The case is at preliminary injunction stage. Both the Ninth Circuit and DC Circuit proceedings remain open. The enterprise governance implication is clear regardless of how the courts ultimately rule. The wrong question is, does my vendor's AI model comply with my policies? That assumes the vendor is a passive supplier of a configurable tool. The right question is, do I understand the values my vendor has embedded in the model I have deployed? And does my governance framework account for what happens when those values and my operational requirements diverge? Most enterprises have the first question covered. Most have not thought through the second. For enterprise architects building governance frameworks on the heaven vector, the ALIA model's ethical guardrails component must account for the legal and contractual resilience of constraints under external pressure, not just their technical enforcement. New Zealand has no statutory equivalent to the US supply chain designation mechanism used against Anthropic. The specific legal confrontation could not replicate here in the same form. LOM operational version can occur here. A government agency deploys an AI tool and later requires a use the vendor's model constraints prohibit. The GCDO responsible AI guidance requires human oversight by accountable people with appropriate authority at every stage. What it does not define is the governance process for resolving conflicts between a vendor's embedded model constraints and an agency's operational requirements. The Anthropic case demonstrates that gap is not hypothetical. The Government Digital Delivery Agency became operational in April 2026 under the Public Service Commission, taking responsibility for all of government AI vendor procurement, including strategic supplier agreements and the government marketplace AI categories. This is the first time New Zealand has had a centralized procurement authority with explicit AI vendor management responsibility. The governance question this case raises is one the GDDA will need to address over time. 3 actions apply now, independent of how the courts ultimately rule. First, audit your vendor's model constraints. Read your vendor's model card, acceptable use policy, and published AI safety documentation. Understand what the model will and will not do. This is not a compliance exercise. It is operational risk management. Second, test your conflict resolution process. If your operational requirements evolve tomorrow to require something your vendor's model constraints prohibit, what is your governance process? Most organizations do not have a documented process for an AI refusal. Human oversight of an AI refusal requires a different governance mechanism from human oversight of an AI action. Third, understand what the court actually found. The government is free to choose a more permissive vendor. It cannot punish a vendor for having constraints. If your requirements exceed your vendor's model constraints, you need a different vendor or a different requirement. That is a vendor selection question before it is a contract negotiation question. Anthropic drew 2 red lines and went to court to defend them. Your organization's governance framework should be clear on where yours are before you have to.
That is the Hamberger report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe.